Okay, I'm going to make a start now. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the first of our 5 sessions this week, working towards the climax of the week, which is AHP's Day. Last year in Devon, we ran a similar session and we had lots of positive feedback, and it's a great opportunity for us to share the great things AHPs are doing across Devon. So thank you so much, everyone, for who's come forward to have a look at the presentations and also to be brave enough to share them. So that's brilliant. My name is Caroline Haig. I'm the Principal Occupational Therapist at Devon County Council, and I'm also the Devon AHP Council Chair. I'm hoping today will be an opportunity for us to celebrate, appreciate, inspire and connect all things AHPs. And thank you so much for Sean, Sam, Victoria and Charlotte, who are going to be presenting today. As I said before, the format of the session will each presentation will last for 10 minutes, and then we'll have 5-minute question time after. You can either raise your hand or put your questions in the chat bar. After that, we'll be free to go because there's 3 presentations today. In some of the sessions this week, we've got 4 presentations. So we've got a little bit of leeway within our lunchtime session. Unless there's any questions for anyone, are all of our presenters okay? Are you happy to share your slides? Brilliant, fabulous. Okay, just a reminder, if you could be on mute, that would be great. If you're not presenting, ideally if you could pop your camera off, so then on the recording we'll be able to see our presenters front and centre on the screen. That would be fabulous. Okay, so I think without further ado, I'll hand you over to Sam and Sean, and I'll let you introduce yourselves and what you're going to be talking about. Thank you.
Thank you. So yeah, I'm Sam Glasser. I'll let Sean introduce himself in a moment. I'm one of the podiatrists. Then we oversee one of the clinics called the offloading clinic for the diabetic foot. So we're going to do a bit of a team effort. So we're going to do half and half, 5 minutes each of this presentation. Sean.
Great. Hi there. Yeah, so my name's Sean. Yeah, I work with Sam at Torbay, and yeah, we both run the offloading, the diabetic foot clinic. So hopefully I've tried to share the screen. Is everyone seeing the start of the presentation? Or
yeah, that's working great.
Great. Okay. So yeah, we'll let Sam start off, and then I'll conclude it.
Thank you, Sean. So yeah, I'll probably just get Sean to click the next slide button as we go, because he's on a different site. So welcome. So yeah, introduction really to our quick oversight of what we do. Just do some background what ulceration is in the diabetic population, and how we triage our diabetic patients into our offloading clinic. A little quick look at how we reduce pressures on the foot, which is one of the causes of ulceration in the feet, and then how we prevent those ulcerations from reoccurring, and that's what we call the re-enablement program. Sean will also go through some of the rates of pre and post offloading for the diabetes patients when they get on the pathway. He's done an audit previously, and he's got some great results from that. And then we'll just go into some summary. Next slide, please. So diabetes and foot ulceration, it's a massive thing. It's global morbidity and mortality, and the cost of it is colossal. Annually it affects 26 million people around the world, and half of those people get a loss of sensation to their feet, and that's what we call diabetic peripheral neuropathy. And that is the loss of protective sensation to their feet. So people stub their toes, for example, and they can't feel it, or they've got areas of callus, which is hard skin, and they can't feel that. So they're really susceptible for tissue breakdown. And the cause of those areas of hard skin is really down to mechanical stress, and that comprises of plantar pressures, so pressures on the bottom of the feet, and the shearing or the friction that happens when we walk. And when the tissues break down, that leads to ulceration because it doesn't heal, and leads to hospitalization, amputation, and worst case scenario, obviously leads to death. So what's the cause? So we talked about plantar pressures, and predominantly ulceration occurs in 50% of diabetic ulcerations on the bottom of the foot, so the plantar aspects of the foot. And that is due to the increased peak plantar pressures. So you can see this little pressure diagram mapping system that we use. The red areas on that foot there, that indicates where the high pressures are, and we can zone in on certain areas of the foot and see where the actual peak plantar pressure is, and that's what we would try and offload. That would be at the highest risk of ulceration. And those areas of high risk really come from foot deformities due to diabetes and the peripheral neuropathy, and the changes in the glycation effects of the soft tissue, so the skin loses its elasticity and causes more risk. So like I say, peak plantar pressures in conjunction with peripheral neuropathy whilst walking, they're important contributory factors to plantar ulceration development. So in 2017, NICE guidelines indicated that all diabetic foot assessments should include a musculoskeletal foot assessment. So in early 2018, my colleague Sean, they designed and developed what we now call the Skeleton tool, and that enables us to triage the higher risk of the diabetic patients with a high risk of foot deformity into those offloading clinics. Next slide, please. So here's the form that we use. Actually, I thought I'd include it because it shows it quite nicely. On the left hand side, we see the second column down is the S part. So this is the biomechanical assessment, and there's 4 sections of the foot that we test. So that would be the ankle. The next one be the subtalar joint, which is part of the hind foot. The normal ray alignment, so that's how the midfoot is aligned, and also the ray function. So does that big toe move? Is it a normal moving foot, basically? And the other risk factors would be the ulceration part. So is there forefoot callus, hard skin, or midfoot? And is there deformities with a combination of neuropathy? So can they feel their feet? And is there a history of ulceration? So we give each of these patients a score, and if it's above, if they've got more than 2-1 in each column, then they will be referred to the offloading clinic because they're at that higher risk of ulceration. Next slide, please, Sean. So I've just included a kind of a basic insole which we can provide chair side. So on the left hand side, this is a left foot that's gone over one of the systems that we can use, that we've got it available to us. And this measures, like I said earlier, peak plantar pressures. So what we're aiming to do is reduce the pressures on our area of interest. So we can see where that little red dot is on the forefoot. We would be looking at reducing that below 350 kilopascals, or 30% of the maximum peak plantar pressures. And we can do that quite simply with insoles. You can see there the middle insole there with an addition, a plantar pad with a cutout, and that can easily reduce peak plantar pressures. And that's the barefoot with, and then with insole, so you can see it reduces peak plantar pressures very well. Next slide, please, Sean.
Okay, so shall I take over now, Sam?
Yeah, please do.
Okay, so one of the things that we wanted to do is obviously check and audit to see if the pathway that we've just gone through there was effective or not. So one of the key aims was to reduce the number of ulcerations, the initial ulcerations occurring. So that was our measurement. We looked at the number of ulcerations before the pathway and then post pathway. So as you can see there, 36% of this patient demographic had an ulceration, but once we put this pathway in place, we reduced that to only 5%, and that was after 12 months. So we measured this at 3 months, 6 months, and 12 months. And even after 12 months, once they'd gone through this pathway, we reduced it by 31%. So it was really good outcome just in that initial aim. One of the things that we didn't improve very much was the number of reulcerations. So whilst we could prevent the initial ulcer happening for those patients that had already ulcerated and healed, the numbers that would go on to reulcerate remained the same as before this pathway. So the national figures were around about 40 to 50% of patients will reulcerate within 3 months, and we found when we audited our data that it was 40%, so it was comparable, but it's still something that we wanted to really improve. So one of the things that we did was looked at the reasons why that might be occurring, of which there's lots of reasons why ulcerations reoccur, such as poor circulation, the type of footwear that they've got on their feet, compliance, whether there's infection rates, comorbidities such as heart problems and things like that. One of the things that we hadn't really looked at was the amount of activity that the patient was doing. So we all think that being active and walking, doing the 30 minutes of exercise per day is good for our cardiovascular system, which it is. One of the problems that we found was that once someone had healed, they were going back straight away to their pre-ulcer activity levels, which meant that the tissue hadn't matured enough and strengthened enough to deal with that activity level. So hence they were reulcerating within those 3 months. So we developed the re-enablement plan, which was a guidance that we give to these patients that allows them to return to normal activity levels. We put it in inverted commas because it's their normal activity levels in a controlled way. So it allows them to increase their activity levels without putting the tissue at risk of reulcerating or reducing the risk anyhow. We measure that in 2 ways. It's either, most commonly it's in a step count, but sometimes it's as a time on feet measurement as well. It just depends what is easier for the patient. We started this in spring of this year, so we'll wait for the 12 months to pass and then re-audit that to see if we've got an improvement on that, but that's our aim going forwards. To just conclude a little bit and go over a bit of a summary, we had a good improvement of preventing the initial ulceration with this pathway. Reulceration rates hadn't changed, but it's something that led to a plan to try and improve that. One thing we haven't really talked about yet, but just to briefly mention that for ulceration healing time, which was another measure that we wanted to look at, we did improve that from 17 weeks to 14 weeks with the inclusion of this pathway. And one of the other things we've found that although reulceration rates, we hadn't improved very much, what we had improved was the severity. The ulceration severity was less, even though the numbers of reulcerations hadn't changed. We also just wanted to look at the reliability of that triage tool that Sam had previously shown you to see if that was valid really or not, and we found that it was both clinically and statistically significant as a measure for diabetic neuropathy and triage in those patients. So that was a good outcome, and it's comparable to other triage tools as well, such as the Waterloo score that's quite often used. So to look at recent improvements that we've done and things that we want to do, there's clear evidence that if patients are referred to this offloading pathway and they go through it, it does improve the prevention of ulceration. We have an acute offloading pathway for those patients that are currently ulcerated, which allows them to access gold standard treatments such as total contact casting or offloading boots, which we know improves ulcer healing rates. We found that we needed to improve our service in terms of having a more prompt referral to our orthotist and therapeutic footwear specialist. They provide a lot of things, but the things we're particularly that we're looking at for this patient is either bespoke footwear or modifications to their shoes. and sometimes accompanying total contact insoles as well, which we know has a good impact on both preventing reulceration and healing ulceration as well. And as we've just discussed, it's led to the development of a reablement plan that allows healed patients to not reulcerate, of which the audit is to come in the next year or so. And yeah, just some references there, but that concludes our presentation. So yeah, if anyone's got any questions.
Fantastic. Thank you, Sean and Sam. Yeah, if we could just, do you want to bring your presentation down,
Yeah.
Sean? That's great. Getting some love from the crowd there. That's great. Thank you.
Hopefully that's got you back to everybody, I think.
Yeah, that's fab. Thank you. Any questions for Sean and Sam? Matt.
Oh, hi Sean, hi Sam, thank you. Can you hear me all right? Sorry, I've just unplugged my headphones. So
Yeah.
it's such a great presentation to kick off the week, first of all. So I've got loads of things I thought I could ask, but one would be, you know, this is a week for all Devon AHPs. So I wondered what your recommendations whether you would have any recommendations for, you know, the other places in Devon about the work you've done, or are they doing similar pathways already, or how do you share the great work that you have done, other than coming to something like this?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, we've done a few conferences now, so I think 2 or 3 conferences, and obviously share the information and the outcomes of what we found on there. And we are part of a BUP research group, which is led by Dr. Joanne Payton and Dr. Richard Collins. Dr. Richard Collins is a colleague. He works at Torbay, but he also does some work down at Plymouth University. So they run a research group there, which we have regular meetings with and share this sort of information with. So we've actually shared, I can't remember offhand how many trusts, but there's a number of trusts, both in the Southwest, but across the country as well, that have taken on this pathway. So they've started to incorporate it into their assessments and annual reviews. So hopefully they'll start to find some similar results as well.
Yeah, that sounds great. There's just what can I ask one more question, Caroline?
Go
Sorry.
on then, quickly, Matt.
Sorry, which is like you've recorded loads of great outcomes, but have things like costs or other benefits to the wider system, have you evaluated them as part of your evaluation? You know, like you know, in terms of if people aren't ulcerating, what might that mean on future care or other things?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's a good question. So in terms of having figures to hand, I haven't got them, but we have looked at it. It was one of the things actually we first presented 2 or 3 years ago now. We looked at a couple of case studies on patients to see what financial saving it would have made to the trust, and it was in the tens of thousands for a patient that had chronic ulceration. So from a financial point of view, it's a huge saving. You know, just from the number of saved appointments, which is a benefit to the patient as well, because it's a better journey for them, less traveling in and exposure to the hospital and things like that. But also from just a staffing point of view, you've got less appointments. It means that the capacity then increases for those patients that have got other ulcerations that with different etiologies that need those appointments. So I can't remember the figures offhand, but I can certainly find them out again and share it if it's what people are interested in. But to sum it up, yeah, there's a financial saving and a better quality of life for the patient.
Yeah, thanks very much.
Fantastic, a brilliant example of the brilliant impact AHPs are having on people's lives, and yeah, I agree with you, Matt. How can we share it more widely and really demonstrate to people the wide impact you're having? Because I'm going to throw in environmental sustainability there. If you're reducing a number of visits and things, as well as the impact on people, cost saving. So it would be great to hear more about that if you've got anything written up, or perhaps you might want to write up something around the quantifying the impact.
Yeah, absolutely. The write-up's in progress, definitely. Yeah.
Yeah, fantastic.
So it will be
Thank you. Thank you so much for coming in, and please do share anything that you have got so we can share it out with people who've attended at least, or certainly through our AHP network distribution. If you share that with Abbey Hall, then we can make sure that people continue to see the work you're doing.
Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you. So next we have Vicky, who's going to be presenting for us. Vicky, do you want to introduce yourself, what you're going to talk about?
Yeah,
Welcome.
absolutely. Thank you so much. Is it okay if I just share my screen first, and then I will introduce who I am and what I'm here to talk about today? So hopefully, is everyone able to see my slides okay? Marvelous.
Yeah, I can see those.
Wonderful. Thank you. So I'm Vicky. I am a specialist clinical community dietitian at Torbay and South Devon NHS Foundation Trust. I'm currently leading on a hydration project in care and nursing homes across Torbay and South Devon. So that's what I'm here to talk to you about today. But before I go ahead, there's someone else I want to introduce you all to. So this is my friend Hydratus. Hydratus is my training mascot, and I brought him to say hello because he kind of adds a little bit of the fun element around hydration, which is exactly what I'm focused on with the project. So I thought it might be nice to kind of just outline a little bit about what this project's all about and where it's kind of come from, really. So there was a study that was done by Lena Tao back in 2019. It was published in the BMJ, and they looked at primarily reducing urine infections and falls within care and nursing homes through the promotion of good hydration. So we took that study and we replicated it locally. We went into 6 homes over 6 months. And the results there were so kind of significant that they kind of wanted to roll this out on a much larger scale, which is kind of where we are today. So I'm currently funded in my role for 18 months. Within that timescale, I'm supporting 3 groups of homes. I'm sadly in my 3rd and final group at the moment, but I'm trying to do all I can just to prove that actually this is an ongoing work, that we need to look at continuing, because once we've got all that support in the care homes and they're doing such fantastic work, hydration is never going to change. So I think it would be nice if we could continue, because it is really making a difference, not only to some of the statistics we're seeing, but also the quality of life of care and nursing home residents. So the project, essentially, there's some core aspects of the project. The first one we look at is delivering whole care home training sessions. So I go into each home individually and kind of develop a bit of a personalised action plan with them. And then I deliver some face-to-face training sessions with their staff. And that training session looks a little bit like the causes and consequences, symptoms of dehydration. We look at exploring barriers around hydration. So we think about the types of residents in each home and how perhaps some of their clinical conditions may be impacting upon their ability to drink. We then look at some practical ways that we can suggest in order to kind of improve people's fluid intake. And then, like I say, we work individually with each home, thinking about what they've got going on at the moment and how we could potentially enhance their current hydration practices. We often encourage everyone to come to those sessions as well, regardless of job role within care and nursing homes, because actually hydration is everybody's responsibility within a care and nursing home setting, and we try to maximise on kind of thinking about how we can make every contact count with residents as well. So we really focus on promoting that message in care and nursing homes, that it's really, really important that they work together as a team, and every little thing they do collectively makes a big difference overall. The second element, then, we ask them to nominate hydration champions. And these are nominated members of their team who will essentially take all the information we provide as part of the whole care home training session, and they look at how they can implement that practically into practice. So we then support them with a second specialist training session where we go into a little bit more in-depth understanding around hydration. We think about the kidneys, we think about the urinary system, we think about urine infections, and we think about evidence-based cycles for change as well, such as the Plan, Do, Study, Act cycle, which will support them in an evidence-based way to make change within the home. The third core element, then, this is where we really see that evidence base coming from with that reduction in urine infections and falls, is we implement structured drinks rounds. So we ask all homes to aim for 7 structured drinks rounds throughout the day, and we do focus on that as part of the training session, as well as to how they can really enhance those structured drinks rounds. We provide them with structured drinks rounds records as part of the introduction pack, so that they're able to evidence that they are doing that, which really does help and support them to keep track on their structured drinks rounds and how they can potentially tweak it if things aren't quite going right. Outside of that, I've been working, really kind of collaboratively with lots of different disciplines within the trust, because I'm really focused on that collaborative working. I think it's really important that actually we're thinking about not just only hydration from a dietetic perspective, but actually we're thinking about the impact on the speech and language therapists, on the falls team, on the care home pharmacists, for example. So I've reached out to all of these teams, and they're very kindly supporting our project by offering out additional training sessions to our hydration champions. So we've got that really holistic and 360 approach to good hydration, which is certainly enhancing all the work that they're doing. We ask homes to record the number of urine infections and falls via safety crosses, and these are really great ways to have a look visually at what's going on within homes. We ask them also to kind of record the initials or the room number of the resident, so we can then identify if there's any frequent fallers or sufferers of urine infections, and then we look at offering out personalised dietetic assessments for them to see if there's anything we can do to really minimise that risk for them. So I thought it might be nice to share some of my statistics to date. So this was my first group when we were looking at a calendar period of 6 months, so between July 2021 and December, sorry. And the number of urine infections we saw there that required antibiotics reduced by 31%, which was just absolutely amazing. We also saw a decrease by 50% of the number of urine infections that required admission to hospital. We also saw the number of falls reduced within care homes by 10%. We saw a number of falls that required admission to hospital decrease by, number of ambulance call outs reduced by 50%, and the number of falls that required admission to hospital decreased by 66%. So not only did we see a reduction in the number of falls within the homes, we also saw a reduction in the severity of the fall as well, and the quality of life of those residents, where we potentially saved some very severe falls is it kind of speaks for itself, really, doesn't it? And actually, when I extrapolated that data against some kind of financial statistics, depending on the severity of the fall, we were looking at saving somewhere between sort of 25 to 250,000 pounds just in that one cohort of homes, which is absolutely amazing. Then when I kind of combined my first and second groups of homes, we again did see some decreases across the board. Unfortunately, some of the data was skewed a little bit related to COVID, so we faced quite a large number of barriers with certainly engagement and trying to get in the homes to actually deliver the training, so it's been really difficult. But this was when I combined both cohorts over 6 months. So again, we saw that UTI requiring antibiotics decrease by 10%. We saw UTI admissions decrease by 50%, and falls within care homes decreased by 5%. And then when we actually aligned them baseline versus intervention, again, we did see some decreases there in the number of urine infections requiring antibiotics by 18%, falls requiring an ambulance call out by 42%, and the falls requiring admission to hospital again decreased by 20%. So really promising statistics, which is just so rewarding for me because it clearly shows all the hard work that the care and nursing homes are doing. So I wanted to share a little bit of fun from our project as well with you, because like I say, I like to make hydration fun, and I think it's really important because that certainly does impact on the quality of life of the residents. So there's one care home there on the left hand side. So they've actually adopted Hydratus, my training mascot, into their home on a permanent basis, and they're a dementia specialist home actually, who have found that because he's brightly coloured, he's a cartoon, they've also found a teddy of Hydratus, and that's really engaged their residents with good hydration. There was a care home there on the right hand side who actually had a Caribbean event. And what was really nice with that is that they created a mobile station. They're a very large home in Newton Abbot. They've got 95 plus residents over there. And they incorporated a lot of the things we talk about in the training into their station, and because it was mobile, they meant they could access every single resident regardless of whether they were bedbound, immobile in the last few days of life. And they really did have some fun elements with that. They had some steel drum music playing, they had maracas for the residents to use, and they actually found that residents that were really reluctant to try new things kept coming back for seconds and thirds, which was just so rewarding to see. We had some Jubilee themed entries as well. So you can see very small picture there. There's Hydratus was actually made the king at that point. And there was some lovely labels and descriptions of drinks and the fruits that were available by another care home, and we really do try to focus on thinking about hydration in a slightly different way, because we do find a lot of barriers that care homes face are around kind of residents really, and the fact that they refuse quite often or they're not engaged with hydration. So actually by thinking about using things like fluid containing foods, we're really encouraging good hydration, not just from drinks, but also from maximising that, where we get about 20 to 30% of our fluid intake from. So I thought it also might be nice to share some learning, obviously what we've learned from the project really. Lots and lots of things have come out in this really. We certainly have identified lots of barriers within care and nursing homes to good hydration. As I say, we do explore those in a personalised way. We also do identify those frequent fallers, people with recurrent UTIs, and then we offer that personalised approach to see what we can do to really kind of minimise that risk for them. We have faced a lot of barriers around care home engagement, particularly if there's been changes in registered manager or hydration champions. Particularly, we noticed that the more engaged the manager is, the more engaged that the champions are and the staff. Also, we have seen high staffing, turnover. They're having difficulty recruiting in the care sector at the moment. That's certainly impacted on a home's ability to actually sign up to the project and take part. And COVID has had a huge impact as well, as I'm sure you can appreciate, because actually it's really prevented us from going in, or some homes from taking part. One thing I'm really proud of is the MDT working, is having that collaboration. It really is important to have the support of the other teams within the trust, because it's just enhancing all the work that everyone's doing around hydration. We have also seen some interest from other care providers who would like to participate in the project. So obviously at the minute we have been working primarily in care and nursing homes, but actually we've had interest from domiciliary care, from learning disabilities, also people in their own homes. So the scope for this work is absolutely huge. And we've also seen interest from other NHS trusts, our kind of local trusts. Either side of us have certainly expressed some interest, and so I've given them some information as to kind of what we've been doing, where the evidence base has come from, and where we've kind of looked at funding the project to see if it's something that they can replicate in their area as well. It also aligns with the work across the Enhanced Health in Care Homes framework as well, to maximise and sustain benefits. So that collaborative working has really kind of enhanced that as part of that Enhanced Health in Care Homes. It also does encompass many key NHS education and improvement national themes, particularly for the next 12 months. And it links in with the NHS England and Improvement Antimicrobial Resistance. I will struggle with that word. And so we're actually, we've been working with them as well to see what we can do in order to provide any support and advice around what we've learned as part of this project. Obviously, one key thing we are facing is the long-term sustainability. I'm really, really conscious that our funding is ending in November, sadly. So I'm trying to do what I can, like I say, to reach out and actually demonstrate how this work is so important and why we need to continue. But I am also trying to be really mindful when I'm working with the homes that actually, can I do something to try to set them up long term, so they can maintain that sustainability themselves should the support be unfortunately withdrawn. So fingers crossed, I'm trying to do all I can, but essentially that is our project. My contact details are there, so if anyone would like to talk to me after the session today, you're most welcome to. Contact number and my email, and it'll be a pleasure to hear from you. Thank you all so much for your time.
Oh, that's so brilliant. Thank you. Thanks so much for sharing.
My pleasure.
If anyone has any questions, I'll let them come in. You're getting lots of round of applause there. Thank you, Vicky. Christy has a question in the chat bar. Do you want to say that, Christy?
Hi, yeah. Oh, hi, sorry, I was trying to unmute myself and put my I had only one headphone in. I was just, I presume you did, but I didn't pick up on it, where you identified kind of patterns of high fallers. Presumably that then was linked into your kind of falls and therapies team as well, so it kind of helped referral that way as well.
Absolutely, yeah.
That's
so that's
great.
where that collaborative working's really been fantastic, because actually I've had those contacts. So one example I could share with you, there was a case study of a particular resident that I had picked up in a care and nursing home in Teignmouth, and very frequent faller. And actually when we got to the bottom of it, I'd completed a dietetic assessment. There was no concerns dietetically whatsoever. The eating, drinking really well. They were having some alcohol, but actually it wasn't impacting upon their fluid intake, and I wasn't concerned about that because they had been reducing it down. But actually what we found is that they had lymphedema in the legs, and it wasn't actually managed, and they weren't wearing their compression stockings. So what that enabled me to do then was to actually reach out to the care home pharmacist, ask for a medication review, and also to a referral back to the lymphedema clinic to have that review to see if we could then get that reassessed and support put into place. I also linked in with the falls team, who actually went out and did a falls assessment with them as well, to see if there's anything we could do to minimise that risk within the home. So it just demonstrates how, that access for me, that collaborative working, has enabled us to really try to minimise that risk for that particular lady. And if we've saved a severe fall, that's just demonstrates exactly why we want to do what we're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. And having these processes in place then, like you say, allows you to pick up more at-risk people and feed them into the appropriate systems more quickly and more effectively, which is brilliant.
Absolutely,
so yeah, great
Christy.
project.
Oh,
really
thank
great.
you. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you. Matt.
Sorry, it's me again. Again, Vicky, it's such an inspiring presentation, and I love like your passion and enthusiasm, as well as like the skill and knowledge and everything you brought to it. But my question is, like listening to it, it was just I was like, oh wow, like all care homes need this. It's such a great idea. There's
Yes,
not just because of your passion, but because of the way you've measured it and demonstrated it. So my question is, what are the barriers you're facing regards to the future funding?
Yeah, so that's a really good question, Matthew, and slightly outside of my remit. Unfortunately, my manager isn't present today. She would be able to answer that one for us, but it certainly does obviously ultimately boil down to the funding and where we're able to actually get access for that funding. We've had a combination of funding from Ageing Well and Better Care funding to support this project for the kind of 18 months. But obviously we're looking at seeing what we can do to have support for. Good timing, Liz. She's our head of department, who might be able to help me answer the barriers we're facing around funding.
Elizabeth, do you want to come in?
Hi, yes, sorry, I was a little slightly late joining, Vicky, but no, well done with your presentation, and it's lovely to hear everyone's reactions, and I absolutely echo your passion for this project, and it's just been so positive. But yeah, it comes down to funding. We're seeking sort of two routes at the moment. We're looking at possibly a bit of extra winter funding, winter precious funding, just to keep it going until we find a longer term solution. We're also looking to the CCG as well for potential funding, just to keep it going a bit longer until we can make it something more solid. The crazy thing is everybody agrees it's such a good project, and it's so positive, but really frustrating that we can't ring fence any permanent funding for it. So it does feel a bit it feels a bit disheartening sometimes. So we're giving it that push to try and extend it for now anyway, certainly, and then look at longer term funding. Yeah, so thank you, Vicky.
Thank you.
Thank you,
I
Liz.
was also wondering if I'm super excited about it as well. I think there's so much potential. I wondered if you've been to the care provider network, where all of the providers. It would be great for you to go and present there. And I think also it would be good for you to talk to our Devon County Council commissioners who are working with provider in terms of what services they might be commissioning to achieve the kind of outcomes that you're talking about. I was also thinking about the opportunity around the training and the champions model, and how they might invest in that champions model so that we could achieve this more widely across Devon as well. And so be interested to know if you felt that would be feasible. You'd have to sort of work something else up, but I think it would be good for you to have you been to the network meeting for the care home providers?
No, I've only been to the care home collaborative forum, which is part of kind of Torbay and South Devon, I think. So I don't think it's as wide as Devon either. But that's as much exposure, I think, as we've had. We are also part of the National Hydration Network as well. And we have been asked to kind of be feeding into the Enhanced Health and Care Homes refresh as well. So we've kind of got lots of different areas where we are reaching out to. But yeah, no, that's one we haven't actually, I think.
Okay, I'll
That's
share
really
that
helpful,
contact
thank
with you after then, or I'll introduce you to Nicola Tribble in relation to that.
That would be amazing. Thank you so much. Thank you, Caroline.
Thank you. And someone's told you need to write this up. We want to see it published, and but also you know, it struck me in the first presentation, brilliant presentation we saw, and now yours, we just need to share this more widely. You know, people are interested in this nationally. How can we make sure that we get this investment locally to showcase what our brilliant AHPs are developing and how they're improving people's lives? So thank you. Really inspiring, brilliant.
My pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Yeah, loving the chat bar. Great project as well. So that's brilliant. Thank you. On to our final presentation from Charlotte. Are you there? Oh yeah, there you are, Charlotte. Thanks for coming.
Yes, I am.
Hello.
Worries.
Do you want to introduce yourself and what you're going to be talking about?
I'll just share my screen.
Thanks for coming.
Yeah, I'll just put my presentation up on the screen. No worries at all. Lovely to see everybody this afternoon. If I put that in slideshow, I'm hoping that you can all see that in slideshow. Just taking a moment or two to get there. Is that okay?
Right.
In slideshow?
Something's coming. No, it's not quite.
No? Okay.
Maybe try that again, because we're just sort of seeing your CB initials. Oh, there
okay.
it is. It's there.
Oh,
it's
okay.
there.
I'll go back.
Sorry.
How's that? Are we there?
I'll be more patient this time. It's a blank screen at the moment, but let's hope.
Just give it a minute and see. I think my internet is on a little bit of a go slow. They're doing local work in my area, which is just perfect timing for today. But there we go.
No worries.
I'll just introduce myself while it's loading up. Is it loading?
I think you might need to try one more time.
Okay. Sorry about this, everybody. Typical. This is going to happen to me. Right, just bear with me 1 second.
It happens to all of us. Don't worry. The joy of technology.
What I'll do is I'll share my main screen and then I can just pop it up on there.
Something's
happened. How about now?
I'm being patient this time because we.
According to my screen, it's sharing, but.
Can anyone else see it? Oh, here it is. It's arrived.
Is it there? Is it there? Oh, hooray. Sorry about that, everyone. Had a minute to catch your breath there. So just to introduce myself, I'm Charlotte Bailey. I'm the therapy lead for adult frailty and specialist services in Live Well South West. So for those of you that don't know, Live Well is the main provider for health, social care and mental health services in Plymouth and South Hams and West Devon. My presentation this afternoon is all about standardising the use of outcome measures for some of our therapy teams, and in particular we'll be using the TOMS, the Therapeutic Outcome Measure Score, and in relation specifically to physiotherapy and occupational therapists. So I'm assuming that's moved on to the next slide because I'm not trusting this afternoon. So hopefully, if you can't see it, please do let me know. But basically, I'm just going to move on to the. I
can't see it.
Okay.
Sorry, can anyone else see it? No, we seem to have lost it. Do you want to ping it over to myself or Abby?
I have emailed it to you already, Caroline, so it should be in your inbox.
Okay.
Sorry, everybody.
That's all right, no problem. Right, let me try and share it then.
Okay.
I want to unshare yours and I'll.
I think I have.
Can you see that?
That would be it. I can see it.
Fab. I can see it, but I can't see anything else. So you carry on.
I've got it. It's not in slideshow presentation. If you're able to put it into that would be really brilliant.
Yeah, I'll reshare it then to do that because I've just put it in now. Can you see that?
Yeah. So if you can move on to the next slide, please, Caroline. and then you'll just have to click through. So we're just going through the why, what's and how. So completely lost my train of thought after all these technical issues, but basically what we wanted to do was look at providing some outcome measure data, because within our organisation, and I'm sure it's the same for all of you, we have a high focus on process and structure. So when we talk about process, we're talking about the number of patients on the waiting list, the number of patients on caseload, the length of wait for treatment. And when we talk about structure, we're looking at staffing and the buildings that we provide our care from. But we don't really have much information around outcome data. So that's the quality of the interventions that we're providing. So we really wanted to fill that gap and provide some standardized outcome data. It's very sporadic. We might do, say, the Berg or the elderly mobility scale, but we wanted something that was going to be applicable to both occupational therapy and physiotherapy. So what we did, so if you don't mind clicking again. So the next line should come up. This has never happened to me before.
There you go.
There we go. That's it. Okay, so we look to agree and implement an outcome measure that would fit the following criteria. So if you just keep clicking, it will just bring up the list there for me. So we needed something that was relevant, something that was valid, reliable. We needed it to be fit for purpose and easy to use. And that was a big one, because we didn't want people to spend lots of time filling it in, but we wanted it to be really easy to process. And obviously, as I said, it had to be applicable to both physiotherapy and occupational therapy. So how we did it, we basically collated a pilot group of 6 therapists that was a combination of physiotherapy and occupational therapy. And we got them using the tool, and we sort of jumped through lots of hurdles and how to make it better. And then we looked at getting data through our business intelligence team. So they worked with us and they started pulling regular data sets. And then when we found that the information that we were getting was really useful, we scaled it up, and we're in the process of scaling up now. So we're looking at spreading that across further therapy teams within our organisation. Okay, so next slide, please. So the question is, why did we use the TOMS? And a lot of you will probably be very familiar with TOMS, and it's predominantly used very much within speech and language circles, but it is becoming much more widely used across other therapies. And that's because it's a really good holistic tool that focuses on 4 different areas, which I've just listed on this slide. So it's based on the World Health Organization classification system. It looks at impairments, activity, participation, and well-being. And well-being can be looked at for both the individual that you're seeing, but also the carer. So within speech and language circles, especially within children's speech and language, the carer bit is very relevant because they look at the parent and the guardian of the child. Perhaps not so much in the circles that we're using it for the frail elderly population, although there is a recognisable problem for carer strain. So if there is an individual that's having regular one carer input, then you could use the TOMS on that individual as well to gauge their wellbeing score. But for this presentation, and predominantly with our teams, we've been looking at the 4 specific areas. And you're using an 11-point scale, which is 0 to 5 with 0.5 scores in between. So you go in and you do your initial assessment with your patient, and it may be that you're getting a score of, say, 1, and then you go back at the final point at discharge, and you might be getting a score of 2. So you get a variance score of 1. So it's not a combined total, it's about a variance score. And that's what we're looking really at the results here. So we're looking at the variation in the degree of improvement or decline. Okay, hopefully that makes sense. I'm not going to go into too much depth about the TOMS, but that's the sort of simplistic use of the tool, really. So if you move on to the next slide, please, Caroline. So basically, I've just shown you the live data that we're capturing at the moment here within LiveWell. Just to explain this first column, which is a big, large column in the graph there, which says first visit. So this is where we found a few hiccups through the pilot group, because when we submit the data into our clinical record keeping system, you have to tick a box to say initial score and final score. And what we were finding through the pilot is that we weren't capturing that final score. So it was very difficult for us to get the variance. This column also represents those that have had a TOMS but not completed it yet, or other reasons why it might not have been completed. So it might be a death or a hospital admission. So that's why that column is a little bit large. But if you're looking at the other columns within the graph, then we're capturing either no change, decline, or improvement. So impairment, it's just important to stress with the group of patients that we're seeing, a lot of these have irreversible long-term conditions. So we're not necessarily looking for improvement, but we're looking for prevention of decline, and that's really, really important. It's about maintenance of those individuals in the community and also prevention of acute admission. So we're getting a 59.2% no change, which to me suggests that we're getting a good degree of maintenance within the community, and a 32.89% improvement within this cohort of patients, which is actually a really good finding. Can you move on to the next slide, please? So then we're looking at activity, and this is particularly relevant to our guys as physiotherapists and occupational therapists. And we got a whopping 61.5% improvement with the patients that we've seen, 30.9% no change, and only a 7.89 decline. So we've got visible data here that the input that we're putting in is actually having a really positive impact on those individuals. Next slide. So this one's all about participation. So this is about the individual's ability to socialise, either with friends or family, and a lot of it's sort of focused on, are they able to move out of one setting to be able to do that? And what we've seen is a really positive improvement of 54.3% improvement, 41% of no change, and only a 4.6% decline in this area. And then the last one is well-being, if you don't mind moving on to the next slide. Fabulous, thank you. And again, a 50.33% improvement in well-being. So this is looking at your frustration, anger, depression. So it encompasses all sorts of things. And I think what you often find, especially these days, that a lot of our patients, they don't get an awful lot of contact with healthcare professionals. So our therapists were often the first person going out, and especially through the pandemic, you were dealing with individuals that might have high degree of stress and anxiety. So what we're seeing here is a visible impact on those individuals and their well-being score. So if you move on to my last slide. So just to sort of summarise really some of the challenges and opportunities that we found with this. The first one was obviously finding an outcome measure that worked for everybody, and we found that the TOMS was really useful for our purpose. It was also about looking at the compatibility of different computer systems. So here in LiveWell, we're very fortunate that we do all of our clinical record keeping on computer systems. Predominantly, we use System 1, and we found that using the TOMS on System 1, it was really straightforward to implement. But we also use a system called CareFirst 6, which has been much more difficult. So we're looking currently at methods that we can use to capture the data via Excel spreadsheets and things. So we're just having to look at different means and ways to do this, and then we can spread it across our urgent care teams once we've done that. And then it was just also about exploring the best way to capture the information, because we wanted to make it as easy for our clinicians as possible. And so as you saw from the slides, we were having a few difficulties with capturing the data from the initial to final report, but we're getting over those hurdles now, and it's actually becoming much easier to capture. And we're really beginning to see those results come through now, and everybody's been really on board, and people are really enthusiastic about using the tool, which is fantastic. And what it's giving us is a really nice comprehensive picture of the data. So we can talk about the process, we can say how many patients we've seen, but then we can also show, and this is the outcome of our intervention, which is really, really nice to see. So that's the end of the presentation. Thank you, Caroline, for putting that up for me. If anybody's got any questions that they'd like to ask, please do.
That's fantastic. Thank you. Great to hear your work. A lot of us talk about TOMS, but having actually achieved it is fantastic to hear, and to be able to evidence the impact of the services as well. Thank you. Any questions for Charlotte? Shall I just come in and ask a question that Matt might ask about how you're sharing? Obviously, you're sharing today, but have you got any plans to share this work any further?
Not at the moment. So it's kind of in its infancy, really, because we've only just moved from the pilot stage to the further rollout. So within our own organisation, we've been doing live training sessions, and then we've recorded those training sessions. So we're just going to try and get sort of more therapeutic what am I trying to say? We're trying to get more people on board within our own organisation therapeutically, and then we can obviously happily share that further afield if people are interested. I know it, like you say, it is something that people have talked about, and you know, it's a recognised, really useful tool, but actually implementing it is another thing. So if people want to hear about it, then please do get in touch.
Thank you. And are you will you be using the data to then think about learning and development in terms of proving quality and outcomes in those specific areas? Have you got any plans around that?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So with the TOMS, it's a fantastic tool because you can look at it on an individual basis, so clinician to clinician, or you can look at it as a team, or you can look at it as an organisation as a whole. So you can actually use that data to look at a specific clinician's data and say, well, I can see we're doing really, really well in terms of activity, but perhaps not so well in participation. So you can use that as a feedback tool to the individual clinician to build in that area. And you can do the same for teams, and we can look at that as an organisation as a whole as well. And I think for me, the vision really is to use that data alongside the process data in terms of using it to CCG and the commissioners to sort of prove that we need more therapeutic input for the patients in our community, so we can provide a better quality service.
Fantastic, thank you. I look forward to seeing this work develop then. That's great. Any other final questions or observations of any of the session or speakers today? I'll just give people a minute just to put the hand up if they want to say anything. Well, I'll just finish off then, because we've got three. Oh, go on, Matt, over to you.
Sorry, I was not going to put my hand up this time, but I was waiting and then no one did, so I thought I'd just put my bit in. And I think it links in with that last point you made, Charlotte. Again, such a good presentation. But because there's often measures that we see therapeutic value, or as therapists we can really relate to as being useful for the work that we're doing with the people we see. But I don't always know if they're the same things that the commissioners would be as interested in or would have as much impact. So what do you think from what you've measured and found would have, do you think they'd be most interested in terms of that? I'm not asking the question very clearly. I guess I'm saying is, do you think the commissioners would be interested in the same things that we would as therapists? And if not, what would we need to demonstrate?
Yeah, it's a really good question, and I suppose I'd have to put myself in a commissioner's shoes to answer that, really. And I think a lot of the time, you know, the demand is so much about getting through the patients and getting through the workload, and it's not actually focused on the quality. And actually, I think the point is proving that, well, if we put the right intervention in place, then it's going to have a longer term impact on that patient. So I think a lot of the time they do focus on the process, but I think actually it's about putting the patient story out there, isn't it? And it's about, I think a lot of the time they do actually value hearing about actually specific patient journeys, and having that quality data to back that up will actually provide a better picture, if I'm making sense what I'm trying to explain here, I hope.
Thank you so much. I agree. What someone said, no data without stories, or no stories without data. 100% agree with you.
Yeah.
So just to finish up, thank you so much for everyone who's presented today. I can't help feeling very excited about what's going on, and thinking, and what are the next steps, particularly in relation to prevention, innovation. I love the measurement. If we didn't have the measurements, we're developing our own triaging tools, and the impact that we're evidencing we're having on people's lives. And as we start to think about what would a rehabilitation offer look like for us in Devon in terms of developing that, this is the absolute foundations and brilliance that we want to be pushing forward. So we're not just managing crisis, we're actually preventing people from becoming unwell, and then helping them achieve optimum outcomes when they, you know, in their road to recovery as well. So thank you so much for everyone who's come along today. Just a reminder, these sessions will be running 12 till 1 for the rest of the week as we build up to AHP's Day on Friday. Thanks to Abby and Matt, who have been really involved in organising these sessions, and a particular thank you to our brilliant presenters for the fantastic work you're doing, but also for coming to showcase that with us today. So thank you so much for your time, everyone. Thanks for coming along and supporting, and hopefully see you tomorrow. Take care, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.